I'm 82 and I still don't know what to say about mental health. I'm 82 years old, and I still don't know what to say about mental health. That's the truth. I've lived through wars and weddings, buried people I loved, watched the world go from rotary phones to screens you can talk to, and yet, I still stumble over the words when it comes to what's happening in here. I can tell you the forecast for tomorrow. I can tell you how to plant tomatoes so they grow straight. I can even tell you what year Elvis first hit the radio. But ask me how I'm doing really, and I freeze like a deer in headlights. It's not because I don't feel things. I've always felt deeply, more than I ever let on. Sometimes I'd feel a sadness I couldn't shake, or a tension in my chest that wouldn't go away. There were days when everything looked fine on the outside, but inside, I was struggling to breathe. I didn't have the words for it back then. I still don't, not all the time. But I know now what I didn't know for most of my life. That was mental health, and I didn't talk about it. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know how. Where I come from, you don't talk about what hurts unless it's a bone or a bullet wound. You keep your head down, you get up early, and you don't complain. Emotions were like dirty laundry. You dealt with them in private or not at all. And if you couldn't deal with them, you just got quiet. You powered through. You manned up. You prayed harder. But pain doesn't disappear just because you refuse to name it. It settles. It waits. Sometimes for decades. And so here I am, 8 decades into this life, still searching for the words. Still wondering why saying I'm not okay feels harder than saying goodbye at a funeral. Still learning that silence might protect your pride, but it can suffocate your soul. I'm not making this video because I have answers. I'm making it because I finally realized I'm not the only one who's been quietly carrying things too heavy for one heart. And if I waited until I was fluent in this kind of honesty, I'd be gone before I ever said a word. So no, I don't know what to say about mental health, not really. But I'm here, I'm trying. And maybe that's a start. Maybe. Just speaking, imperfectly, awkwardly, a little late is enough. I was born into a world that didn't talk about what hurt inside. You could talk about hard work. You could talk about discipline, or sacrifice, or pulling yourself up by the bootstraps. You could talk about broken bones, bad knees, and bills. But feelings? That was a different story. Where I came from, there was no such thing as mental health. There were only 2 gears. You were either strong or you were weak, and weakness was shameful. My father was a farmer. My mother never sat down. They didn't ask us how we felt. They asked us if the chores were done. And even when we were hurting, there was always something more important to tend to: cows to feed, wood to chop, people to take care of. Sadness wasn't sadness. It was having a bad day. Worry wasn't worry. It was just nerves. And fear? Fear was for those who didn't have enough faith. So we learned early on to fold our pain up small and tuck it into the quiet corners of our minds, where nobody would see it. I remember going to my uncle's funeral when I was 12. He'd passed in a way no one really explained. I just remember the hush, the awkward glances, the way the grown-ups changed the subject anytime we asked questions. He was tired, they said. He's in a better place. And I nodded like that was enough. But inside I had a dozen questions and nowhere to put them. Back then, men didn't cry. Women didn't rest. And if someone in the neighborhood had what we'd now call depression, we said things like, she's just delicate, or he's had a rough spell. We didn't ask what they needed. We didn't ask what they felt. We just left a casserole and moved on. There were no counselors in our schools, no hotlines, no words like anxiety or trauma floating through our homes. There was just grit. You were supposed to suck it up, straighten your shoulders, and get back to work. So I did. But I also learned how to keep secrets from myself, how to bury things so deep I forgot they were even there. I became very good at being fine, too. Good, because the world didn't give us a language for emotional pain. And without words, the only thing left was silence. The years went on. I got married, had children, worked jobs, paid bills. I did what I was supposed to do. I showed up every single day, But inside me, things didn't always feel right. There were mornings I woke up feeling like something heavy was pressing on my chest. There were nights when I'd stare at the ceiling, my thoughts running in circles I couldn't stop. I had moments, at work, at church, even during family dinners, where I'd feel suddenly detached, like I was watching my life from the outside in, but I didn't have the words. So I told myself I was tired, stressed, moody. I chalked it up to getting older, to money problems, to parenting struggles, to everything except what it really was. A heart quietly unraveling without ever being heard. You see, pain that doesn't speak doesn't disappear. It finds other ways to show up. In my case, it looked like short tempers and long silences. It looked like overeating some days and skipping meals the next. It looked like being physically present with my family, but emotionally somewhere far away. I didn't cry much. I couldn't afford to. Crying meant something was wrong, and if something was wrong, what kind of father was I? What kind of husband? What kind of man? So I held it in. For decades. Looking back, I think there were times my body was trying to say what my mouth couldn't. The panic attacks I didn't have a name for. The tension, headaches. The fatigue that didn't go away, even after rest. I thought I was just getting old. But the truth is, I was carrying an emotional load that no one ever taught me how to set down. And the hardest part? I wasn't alone. There were so many of us silently breaking under the weight of being strong. Friends, co-workers, even my own siblings. We never talked about it. We didn't know how. Our lives were built on foundations of silence. Quiet, brittle foundations that cracked in ways we never fully admitted. I missed out on help I didn't know existed. I pushed people away when I needed them most. I thought if I just worked harder, prayed longer, or toughed it out, I'd come through clean on the other side. But healing doesn't come from hiding. It took me years, decades, to realize that what I was feeling wasn't failure. It was just pain. Human pain. The kind that deserves to be named, not ignored. And maybe, if I'd had the language earlier in life, I would have spoken sooner. But even now, even with the tremble in my voice and the cracks in my story, I'm ready to learn how. It happened slow at first, like most things that matter. A moment here, a sentence there, a crack in the shell I'd spent a lifetime building. I didn't wake up one morning and decide, today I'll talk about mental health. No, it came in sideways, through people I never expected and conversations I didn't know I needed. One of the first times I said it out loud, I wasn't even trying. I was sitting on the back porch with my grandson, both of us drinking sweet tea, watching the sun go down. He was quiet that evening, thoughtful. Then he turned to me and said, "Grandpa, do you ever feel anxious?" I wanted to brush it off. I almost did. I had 100 automatic answers in my mouth, all ready to go. "You'll be fine. It's just a phase, tough it out." But something in his voice made me pause, made me choose a different kind of honesty. "I do," I said. "I just didn't always have a word for it." He looked surprised, then he smiled. And just like that, something opened between us, something deeper than advice or solutions. It was connection. That was the beginning. Since then, I've started saying more. Not everything, not all at once, but enough. I've told friends I trust. I've been carrying some heavy feelings. I've told my daughter, I think I spent a lot of years pretending I was okay when I wasn't. And I've told myself in the mirror, it's not too late to be kind to this version of you. Some days the words still feel foreign, like I'm speaking a second language I never learned in school. But even clumsy truth feels better than polished silence. I've written letters I'll never send, just to name the things that were never spoken. I've sat in church and cried for no clear reason, just relief. I've joined a group of older folks who meet every Wednesday at the library to talk about aging and loss and memory. We don't call it therapy, we just call it honest. And that's what I'm learning. Healing doesn't have to be dramatic. It doesn't have to be loud. Sometimes it's a quiet sentence after dinner. Sometimes it's letting yourself cry during a TV commercial and not apologizing for it. Sometimes it's listening to someone else's pain and saying, "Me too. There are things I'll never fully figure out." But I'm starting to believe this. Speaking our pain, gently, truthfully, isn't weakness. It's wisdom. Because even at 82, there's still time to unclench your jaw, to loosen your grip, to whisper the truth you've waited a lifetime to say, "I've struggled, and I'm still here." If you're waiting for the perfect moment to speak, let me tell you something from 8 decades of living. It doesn't exist. There will always be laundry to fold, people to take care of, voices in your head that say, "Nobody wants to hear that." But silence isn't safety. It's loneliness in disguise. I spent most of my life thinking that mental health was for other people, people with diagnoses, or trauma, or dramatic stories. I thought it didn't apply to me. I was just trying to get through the day, just trying to be strong. But I've learned that mental health doesn't need a label. It just needs honesty. You don't have to sit in an office or take a test to know when something inside you is hurting. You just have to listen. And once you hear it, once you name it, even quietly, that pain begins to loosen, like a knot you've carried in your chest finally giving way. I still don't have all the right words. I probably never will. But I've found this to be true. You don't need to say it perfectly to say it at all. You can say, "I'm tired." You can say, "I've been feeling off." You can say, "I don't know why I feel this way, but I do." You can say it in a letter, in a whisper, in a prayer. You can say it to a friend, to a journal, to yourself. What matters is that you say it, because when you do, you're not just letting something out, you're letting something in. Compassion, understanding, connection, and maybe even healing. I'm 82, and I still don't know what to say about mental health, but I'm saying something. And that's a beginning, so if you're watching this and you've been holding it in too long, if you've never had the words or you've forgotten how to use them, try anyway. Speak anyway. Love yourself enough to let the truth be messy, because this heart of yours, it's been waiting to be heard, and I promise it's not too late.